The following content may contain visuals that are disturbing, graphic, or sensitive in nature. Viewer discretion is advised. This material is intended for mature audiences and may not be suitable for all viewers. Please exercise caution while watching, and if you find such content distressing, we recommend discontinuing viewing. This disclaimer is provided to ensure awareness and to prioritize viewer well-being.
Hello and welcome to this brand new edition of Global Lens on News9 Live with me, Neha Khanna. As always, we have a packed show for you, and our big focus continues to be on the Israel-Hamas war. Israel is fighting a 7-front war. This admission, after nearly 3 months of intense fighting in Gaza, has come from none other than Israel's Defence Minister Yoav Gallant. This, as Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the war is far from over, and Israel's military chief claims the war against Hamas will continue for many more months. Let's start with the Israeli Defense Minister. Yoav Gallant has said, and I quote, "We are in a multi-front war and coming under attack from 7 theatres: Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Judea and Samaria in the West Bank, Iraq, Yemen and Iran." Gallant has listed 6 places where Iran-backed militants are active, as well as Iran itself. He added, "We've already responded and taken action in 6 of these theatres," though he didn't specify the one which was yet to see Israeli action. And it's not just this statement. In recent days, we've seen growing signs that the conflict is starting to spread in the region. A fear that has been expressed for a long time now by Middle East watchers. Consider these important facts. Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi militia claimed responsibility for a missile attack on Tuesday on a container ship in the Red Sea and for an attempt to attack Israel with drones. In fact, the Houthis have been attacking ships which they say have links to Israel at the entrance to the Red Sea, one of the world's busiest shipping lanes. The attacks are a response to Israel's assault on Gaza. An Israeli airstrike killed a senior leader of Iran's Revolutionary Guards in Syria on Monday. The IRGC threatened to avenge the killing of Syed Razi Mousavi, saying the Israeli regime would undoubtedly pay the price for this crime. On the Lebanon border on Tuesday, Israel said Hezbollah fired anti-tank missiles at a church, wounding 9 Israeli soldiers and a civilian, after which it fired rockets from near a mosque, drawing retaliatory airstrikes. In India, the Israeli embassy says there was an explosion near the embassy in capital New Delhi. No one was hurt. The US military carried out retaliatory airstrikes on Kataib Hezbollah militants in Iraq on Monday after a drone attack on a US base in Erbil left 1 US service member in a critical condition and wounded 2 others. In a televised statement, Israel's military chief Herzi Halevi has said, "There are no magic solutions, there are no shortcuts in dismantling a terrorist organization, only determined and persistent fighting. We will reach Hamas leadership too, whether it takes a week or several months." While emphasizing that there is no stopping the war until complete victory over Hamas, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wrote in a Wall Street Journal op-ed that for peace to be achieved, there are 3 prerequisites. Hamas must be destroyed, Gaza must be demilitarized, and the Palestinian society must be de-radicalized, in his words. Now, there has been concern for a while that a regional war could erupt after Hamas attacked Israel on the 7th of October, killing 1,200 people. Israel's onslaught on Gaza, that has left to close to 21,000 Palestinians dead, and limited exchanges between Israel and Hezbollah forces in Lebanon. But the pace of attacks and escalations in recent days appears to be gaining its own deadly momentum, fueling fears of further rising tensions. The geographic footprint of instability is now stretching towards even India after a chemical tanker operating in the Indian Ocean was struck by an Iranian attack drone on Saturday, 200 nautical miles from the Indian coast, according to the Pentagon. Iran has repeatedly denied its involvement. And the ramifications of this escalation are not just military in nature. This comes with a very high economic cost too for the global community. A broadened conflict could have painful economic consequences given the Red Sea's critical importance to global supply chain routes for energy and goods. The waterway is bordered on its eastern flanks by Yemen and Saudi Arabia, and to the west by Eritrea, Sudan and Egypt. It feeds into the Suez Canal at the Sinai Peninsula, which belongs to Egypt and borders Israel. The potential economic disruption has prompted the United States to frame an international coalition to protect merchant ships from Houthi attacks. On Tuesday, the French Foreign Ministry said France is seriously concerned by Israel's announcement that fighting in Gaza would be intensified and prolonged. In a statement, the ministry repeated its call for an immediate truce that would lead to a ceasefire, saying systematic bombings had resulted in numerous civilian casualties in recent days. The French statement read, Israel must take concrete measures to protect the lives of the civilian population in Gaza, and that Israel should facilitate aid deliveries throughout the Gaza Strip and take urgent measures to ensure safe and unhindered humanitarian access. Just last week, French President Emmanuel Macron had said, combating terrorist groups cannot mean hitting civilian populations. Macron also said, we can't let the idea be accepted that fighting terrorism effectively would mean flattening Gaza or indiscriminately attacking the civilian population and to cause civilian casualties. He added, the security response to terrorism is not massive destruction, including civilian infrastructure and hitting civilian populations.
We are in a multi-front war and are coming under attack from 7 different theaters: Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Judea and Samaria, Iraq, Yemen and Iran. We've already responded and taken action in 6 of these theaters. And I say here in the most explicit way, anyone who acts against us is a potential target. There is no immunity for anyone.
This war has necessary and not easy goals to achieve. It takes place in complex territory. Therefore, the war will go on for many months, and we will employ different methods to maintain our achievements for a long time. There are no magic solutions, no shortcuts in dismantling a terrorist organization. Only determined and persistent fighting, and we are very, very determined. We will also reach the leadership of Hamas, whether it takes a week or whether it takes months. Thanks to the spirit, thanks to the professionalism, we will arrive. Today, an Israeli fighter jet intercepted a hostile aerial target in the Red Sea area, which was en route to Israeli territory. It did not cross into Israeli territory. The Houthi fire toward Israeli territory is an act of terrorism. It is an act directed by Iran and by means of Iranian intelligence and weapons. These hostile acts are not directed only at Israel. The attacks at sea on ships, which have no Israeli link, is an act of Iranian terrorism carried out by the Houthis, and this is a global problem.
All right. So what does this admission by the Israeli Defence Minister really mean, and where is this war headed? Let's make sense of it with our panel of experts. Joining me on Global Lens tonight, Itai Melchior, Research and Advisor, Middle East and Africa Affairs, and former Executive Israeli National Security Council, joining us live from Haifa in Israel. Dr. Alexander Grinberg, Captain, IDF Military Intelligence Research Department at the Jerusalem Institute for Security and Strategy, also joining us live from Israel. And completing the panel tonight is our Indian guest, Major General Ashwini Sewach, Defence and Geopolitical Expert, joining us from New Delhi. Gentlemen, welcome to Global Lens. Itai Melchior, welcome back. Let me start with you. Now, for a long time, we have asked this question on Global Lens. How much longer is it going to take before this conflict escalates and widens in the region? But now it seems we have our answer, because none other than the Defence Minister of Israel has gone on record to say, and I'm quoting him here, we are in a multi-front war and coming under attack from 7 theatres. He's named Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Judea and Samaria in the West Bank, Iraq, Yemen and Iran. He goes on to say we've taken action in 6 of these theatres. I'm guessing the only one left out is Iran. What should be made of this statement that has been made by the Israeli Defence Minister, and the fact that countries around the world are now increasingly concerned about the geopolitical, military and economic ramifications of this war that no longer seem to be confined to just Gaza?
Yes, well, the question we'd like to ask is when it's going to end and not when it's going to escalate. But the Minister of Defense is right and he's wrong. Yes, it is 7 fronts, but it is one war. We are fighting against one enemy that is orchestrating it. There is an octopus sitting in Tehran and orchestrating everything and all its proxies, because we have no war with Iraq. It's not the Iraqi government that is fighting with Israel. It's Iranian-backed militias in Iraq. We have no current conflict with Syria or with the Syrian government or Syrian army. Again, it's Iranian-backed militias acting there and being part of the supply chain from Iran to Lebanon, where Hezbollah is backed by Iran, also proxy. While we have no problem with Lebanon, we are not at war with Lebanon or with the Lebanese army. So it's all one war, just taking on different facets as it fits. Now, you alluded to the fact that the world is worried, and I think rightfully so, of economic consequences. Because in the end, the problem Iran has is not with Israel, it's with the West, with Western values, with free trade, and therefore their hope, after they failed to get oil prices to go up and to create shortage that we have seen in the past conflicts, that some oil embargoes and some price hikes dramatically impacted the West. This time we have not seen that, despite the efforts, and therefore the hope of blocking the Suez Canal, which is a very important throwaway to Europe from the Far East, was a hope also, but we have not seen. There's been a slight raise of price of oil, but this is still less than it was at the beginning of the conflict, so therefore it's not that significant. They would very much like to see the world in economic crisis, but I don't think we're heading there. It's going to raise the cost of shipping. It may affect the price of oil. It will create delays. I think some people in Europe who are waiting for their Christmas presents might get a bit of a disappointment. But besides that, again, it's one war, one enemy that's orchestrating everything. And in the end, if it does escalate, it does mean that Israel will have to strike at the head of the octopus.
The head of the octopus. You may call it one war, but the 7 fronts on which it seems to be taking place now is most certainly a matter of concern, I'm guessing, for Israel and indeed for the international community. And let me also quickly remind our viewers, as you mentioned there, of course, sea trade has taken a hit. Shipping in the Red Sea area has taken a hit. The Biden administration is increasingly concerned over the growing death toll in Gaza, given that President Biden faces a tough election against Donald Trump just next year. And Iran has issued a threat to Israel. The IRGC has threatened to avenge the killing of Sayyid Razi Mousavi, its senior commander, saying the Israeli regime will undoubtedly pay the price for this crime. So let me bring in Dr. Alexander Grinberg at this point. Dr. Grinberg, it is your Defense Minister who says we are fighting a 7-front war. How costly do you think this war is likely to be for Israel and for the larger international community? Because worries are now growing on multiple fronts.
Well, I think our defense minister only emphasized the fact of what is going on. So yes, if Iran is attacking us on several fronts, and we will strike back. If the Houthis, orchestrated by Tehran, pose a threat for the global trade, so the United States must determinately resolve this issue.
Okay, you're saying the defense minister has just stated the facts, but the question really is, as I said, how costly could this prove to be both for Israel and for the international community at large. We are given to understand that this war has already tripled the budget deficit for Israel.
Look,
this was a statement that was made by the finance minister of Israel in the Knesset on Monday. Go ahead.
Okay, so I don't know how much costly it will be. No one wants it to be costly. No one wants war. But if our country is attacked by another country and by another country's proxies, so we will defend ourselves. I think it's quite simple.
Okay.
We cannot renounce to the protection and defense of our citizens because it will be costly. So it will be costly, but we will strike back the enemy.
Okay, of course, the big question that many have also asked is what happens if a country like Iran gets sucked into this war? I need to take a quick break here on the show, but we will continue this discussion on the other side.
जानना है तो देखिए, समझना है तो सुनिए, सीखना है तो पूछिए और कमाना है तो खरीदिए। जानकारी, सलाह और निवेश सब एक ही सुपर ऐप पर। पैसे का सवाल है तो जवाब है Money9। आजादी पैसे की, अभी डाउनलोड करें।
Welcome back. We're discussing the Israel-Hamas war. Let me now go across to Major General Ashwini Sivaj. General Sivaj, you've heard what the Israeli... Okay, I'm told we don't have General Sivaj with us right now. Okay, let me go back to Dr. Alexander Grinberg at this point. Dr. Grinberg, the question I was asking is, many Israelis seem to think that it is Iran which is the chief architect of the 7th October Hamas terror attacks that were perpetrated against Israel, and that it is with Iran's backing, funding, possibly military training that those terror attacks were made possible. Now we are looking at a situation where Iran is openly showing threats to Israel in the context of a senior IRGC commander being assassinated. How do you see Iran's role in all of this, and do you think there could actually be a situation where Iran directly gets involved in this conflict?
Okay, thank you for that question. First, I don't think Iran orchestrated everything in the attack of Hamas. It was the attack by Hamas. But Iran, of course, supplied intelligence and helped Hamas with weapons, because Hamas launches AT guided missiles, Cornet, made in Iran upon a Russian license. And Iran, of course, praises the massacre that Hamas perpetrated, and Hamas positions itself as an active supporter of Hamas, of what Iran calls Mahvar-e Muqawamat, the axis of resistance. That all that doesn't mean that Hamas wants to sacrifice itself or its closest proxies like Hezbollah for the sake of Hamas. And the third thing is that Iran cannot be involved directly in war with Israel and or America, because it is simply physically and technically impossible, because Iran is a very weak country from the point of view of conventional military might. Iran doesn't have a significant air force, etc., etc. All attack potential in Iran lies in its asymmetric capacity, included proxy wars. So I don't think Iran is able to retaliate military to Israel. It can do something, of course, but I don't think it will be up to the scale of the blow that dealt Iran. And Iran, of course, can stage numerous terrorist attacks against Jews, Israelis, or Americans global-wide, as they used to do. And they may attack, for example, in Iraq, in Kurdistan. They also used to do that done that a year ago, attacking Erbil. Why there? Because it is the closest point to Iran, where Iran can conduct actions itself without resort to the services of proxies.
Okay.
Hezbollah, there is also another, of course, Iran can order Hezbollah in principle, but I'm not sure Iran will do that because it will compromise Hezbollah. Hezbollah, in the end of the day, it's true, it's orchestrated by Iran, but it is also a Lebanese party. And currently, all the critics of Hezbollah blame it for being Iranian agent and not protector of Lebanon's interests. So if Hezbollah reacts in a more serious way than it is doing now, it will also mean escalation that Iran does not necessarily want, and it will compromise Hezbollah because it will corroborate all the accusations towards Hezbollah that say they're protecting the Iranian regime, not Lebanon's interests. But again, what I say doesn't necessarily mean that this exactly is the logic of Iran.
Okay. Major General Savash, let me come to you now. The Israeli Defence Minister has categorically stated the country is fighting a seven-front war. He says they've taken action in 6 of these theatres, and these are all areas where Iran-backed militants are known to be active. And the 7th front that he's named is Iran itself. My question to you simply is, how complex and costly do you think the 7-front war could prove to be for Israel and for the larger international community? Because as I keep saying, the military as well as the economic costs keep going up.
Very correct, Neha. But in case if one is not directly going after Iran, the fact that Iran-backed Houthi rebels are now creating a problem in the Red Sea, that they are not allowing the commercial vehicle to use the Suez Canal. And that's why majority of the ships are now going around African continent through Cape of Good Hope. This has changed the complete, one can say, the situation in this area. Earlier, what was happening is that one was thinking that possibly Iran will not come directly in this war, and America has also sent its 2 aircraft carrier group in Red Sea to basically challenge Iran not to venture and directly involve itself into the war. But the way it is using Houthi rebels, especially in Red Sea, it has thrown the whole economy of the world now in a jeopardy. Now, what is happening is the 12% of the trade comes through Red Sea going through the Suez Canal. That completely is now being diverted and taking the route toward the basically African continent. Now, this has made 2-3 things. One is the trade is costlier by 23% and it takes 14 to 15 days more, and the insurance has gone to 18% more. And therefore, what has happened after Russia and Ukraine war, the food, fuel and fertilizer became costlier. They will become further costlier by this. So therefore, Iran very cleverly using Houthi rebel to put pressure on the world as well as Israel to stop this war. But now the US is in double mind as to how to handle Iran. Now the point is that Iran is not directly coming into war, but Iran is using very cleverly the Houthi rebels, which have really jeopardized the complete trade of the world, because majority of the oil as well as the LNG come through this route only to basically Asian countries and European countries. And this is the shortest route from Asia to Europe. So the question comes is, will this war remain the way it is, or there are scope of it is going and enlarging, that US start striking on Iran, or Iran is the one which is using its drones? Now there have been rumors that the 2 ships of India which were basically hit by drone, they have been come from Iran. That's what US is telling. So we are on a very thin line and thin edge. So far the war was only restricted between the Israel and Hamas and also certain proxy of Iran like Hezbollah and Houthi rebels, but now it enlarging into a major conflict, especially in Red Sea, and US going after Iran. There is a certain possibility, and that will, in fact, will change the shape of the whole war, because the China and Russia very cleverly are watching from the sideline. They are not opening their card, though indirectly they stand to gain. China, because their Belt Road Initiative was come under scanner due to this India, Middle East, Europe corridor was to be made. That has now come in cold storage. So China has indirectly got advantage. So is the Russia, because the Russia-Ukraine war, where the focus was on Ukraine and NATO and Europe countries, and US was giving a lot of aid to Ukraine, that has now been diverted to Israel-Hamas war, and that has also directly benefited Russia. So to them it is benefited. They are not opening their card. What is their stand on that the Houthi rebels are now targeting the commercial vehicle in the Red Sea? They are not openly coming out. However, to me it looks like that the problem can go out of hand, and this can create a regional war, and that war then can further flare up. So therefore the cause, the point is, Neha, this is a very testing time. The next few days will tell us whether this war will be curtailed or this war has a potential to enlarge itself. Especially the US has already made an international maritime
coalition
force, which
yes.
India is not a part of it.
Absolutely, sir. You make some very valid points. So the next few days could be crucial, because the situation that's developing is worrying. It is worrying for the international community. It is worrying in terms of the costs it could impose on the world. And no less than the United States of America, Israel's staunchest ally, now seems to be very worried on multiple counts. Not to mention the fact that they go on reminding Israel about how it needs to do more to protect civilian lives in Gaza. But how are they going to contain this escalation is now perhaps the million-dollar question. All right, gentlemen, I need to take another quick break here on the show. Please stay with us. We'll continue this discussion on the other side.
तो जब हम करेंगे तो पता लग ही जाएगा. सलमान खान का करेंगे, मारेंगे यहीं जोधपुर में मारेंगे तो पता लग जाएगा.
This is someone who is sitting inside our jails and is still very obviously and openly running, and possibly the largest organized criminal operation in the country.
Student organization of Punjab University में सोपूगा acting president type भी रहा है.
He was a troublemaker, getting into fights with people, not coming to the class.
As on date, it appears that Lawrence gang is the most important, the prominent gang. Gangs here in Punjab, they are intimidated.
Today he is India's most dangerous gangster, and India's presence are apparently no bar to how Bishnoi runs India's largest criminal empire.
News is now content. Just stream it. Download the world's first news OTT, News9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
Since the last 2 years, Khalistani terror groups are threatening Indian diplomats in Canada, US, UK and Australia. Investigations of these threats led us to the first ever abduction and killing of an Indian diplomat, Ravindra Matre, in UK's Birmingham in 1984. Our months-long investigation finally led us to the murderer of Ravindra Matre, who has been hiding in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir for the last 40 years. Watch our exclusive documentary, Murder of an Indian Diplomat, where we reveal the man who killed Ravindra Matre.
Stop searching, start streaming. Download the world's first news OTT, News9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
Seeing is believing. Or is it? These are your favorite celebrities that you saw in the videos. But what if I told you that they are not?
Today, deepfake is one of the biggest challenges that the digital ecosystem is facing.
Cannot identify what is deepfake and what is real.
We have seen Rashmika Mandana go through the same thing, and this is becoming a common problem.
Everybody is going to be targeted.
The execution there's a laxity in our regulatory execution. In times to come, that is going to cost us a lot.
Welcome back. We're talking about the Israel-Hamas war. Let me go back to Itai Melchior at this point. Itai Melchior, as we talk about this seven-front war, which the Israeli Defence Minister has referred to, I want to quickly remind our viewers about some of the very important and worrying developments that have taken place in the last few days, apart from, of course, the military operations in Gaza intensifying by your Prime Minister's own admission. But look at what's been happening. We know that the Houthi militants are constantly attacking ships in the Red Sea, because of which the US has actually now forced this international maritime coalition. You've had an Israeli airstrike killing a senior leader of the IRGC, and Iran threatening to avenge him, saying the Israeli regime will pay a price for it. On the Lebanon border, Hezbollah has been firing anti-tank missiles, killing Israeli soldiers. Israel has retaliated, and so on and so forth. My point simply is, and of course, let's not forget the US carrying out retaliatory airstrikes on Kataib Hezbollah militants in Iraq and in Syria. Therefore, my question to you is this. How do you see this war panning out in the days ahead? General Sivach says that the next few days could actually tell us to what extent we could see a widening of this conflict. And even though, Dr. Grinberg seems to think that Israel may not have the stomach, I beg your pardon, not Israel, Iran may not have the stomach to get directly involved in the war, the way things currently stand. But clearly tensions between Israel and Iran are escalating by the day as well.
Yes, so first I just want to go back and say I'm not sure that we are interpreting correctly where Israel has acted, because according at least to foreign sources, Israel has acted in Iran, and I don't think Israel has acted in Iraq. So maybe that is actually the resolution for this puzzle. The war with the Houthis, again, when it comes to Israel front, is not serious. Houthis are far away. They fire ground-to-ground missiles. They fire drones. Most of them are shot down on the way, either by allied forces or by the US or by Israeli Air Force and other Israeli defense, anti-missile defense systems. The same is true for Iraq. They've also tried to send to Israel drones and maybe also a missile that were intercepted very far away from Israeli borders. So that is not a threat on Israel either. It is a threat on US forces, and the amount of attacks that the US has suffered in Syria and Iraq from these organizations is actually quite staggering. And the lack or relative lack of response from the US is actually worrying to some of its allies. The main worry for Israel currently is from Lebanon, from Hezbollah, which has a big arsenal, which sits on the Israeli border, and that is probably the next front that is being tried to be avoided by political negotiations to get the Hezbollah to act in accordance with the UN Resolution 1701 and go back behind the line of the Litani River. If that is achieved through diplomatic negotiations, and both the Americans and the French and other countries are involved here, then a war will be avoided on the northern front for now, because Hezbollah is not dismantling its forces. But if it does move back, then there will be no war now. And the war in Gaza will have to continue along to the guidelines as set out by Israel originally. Hamas has to be dismantled, either give up arms, return the hostages, and they will be allowed the free passage to leave even. And most likely, since this is not going to happen, we're going to see that war keep on going. I think you mentioned in the beginning the civilian casualties. I don't know any army, and we have a general with us who can attest to this, that actually divides an area up to a map and tells civilians, go there, this is a safe zone, we won't bomb there for the next time, knowing that the terrorists are also using these safe zones. So this is an unprecedented...
You could say that, Mr. Melchior, but fact of the matter is that close to 21,000 Palestinians are dead, despite those so-called warnings issued by Israel. And, you know, it's interesting you say that Israel doesn't need to worry about the Houthi rebels. Well, but fact is the rest of the world does need to, which is why you have this international maritime... Yeah, you know, so Israel may not be worried on that front, but the world is. The US is.
I was coming to that. I started with our 7 fronts because the Iraqis are for sure not a threat for the world, nor what is happening in Syria. The Houthis, as the proxy arm, and some intelligence even shows with some connection or a nod or approval from China, but certainly what the Houthis are doing is trying to disrupt the world, again, to draw attention to this at the order of Iran. So again, Israel does not have beef with Yemen, and even with the Houthis, the only reason they're involved is to try and create havoc on the world stage. But as you see, what is happening from this is a world coalition that is forming against the Houthis. It's actually pushing Israel closer to other Arab countries, Saudi Arabia, who thought they were on track to peace with Houthis, and suddenly the Houthis are again coming to the bad side, and maybe will be declared a terrorist organization again by the US. Egypt is suffering economically heavily because the Suez Canal is in charge of more than 10% of their GDP.
And that is the whole point. That is the whole point, that, you know, the ramifications of this war go well beyond Gaza, and the larger international community is now feeling the heat and beginning to pay a heavy price for it. Since I'm running out of time, I want to quickly take closing comments from my other two guests. Dr. Grinberg, the Israeli Prime Minister recently wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal saying Hamas must be destroyed, Gaza must be demilitarized, and the Palestinian society must be de-radicalized. These are the 3 prerequisites for any kind of peace to be achieved. Well, if radicalization of the Palestinian society is a challenge that has existed for decades, how is Israel going to de-radicalize the entire society in a few weeks? Some are arguing, isn't this tantamount to saying that the war will go on indefinitely? Could you unmute yourself, please, Dr. Grinberg?
Sorry, I don't think the war will go indefinitely. The war will go until all its objectives are achieved. It will take time, but it will be accomplished. And well, you know, just as Nazi Germany was de-radicalized, so it's a way for the Palestinians to de-radicalize. Either they do it themselves, or if not, they will be made to de-radicalize. I understand, of course, that you expect us both to say that Israel is the root of the problems because of Iran threats the global trade. It's Israel's fault. Israel must excuse and stop fighting. It won't happen. If America is scary of hitting a backward, weak country like Iran, I don't believe China, that is watching closely what's going on, will be convinced to stop its provocations regarding Taiwan.
Okay, you know, I don't think it is anybody's case that China or Russia would want to get involved in this war. But my specific question was about
radicalization. No, I don't think they will be involved in war.
Okay,
but
yes,
if
I agree
America is not ready to show its might to much weaker proxies, how it will do towards China.
Okay, and you're hoping that would be a deterrent for Iran as well. But my specific question was about de-radicalization. I'll put that question to Major General Ashwini Sivaj because I need to wrap up the discussion after this. Dr. Ashwini Sivaj, I will quote 2 leaders for you and our viewers. The Jordanian Prime Minister recently said that, the civilian killings that have taken place in Gaza in the last 3 months are enough to radicalize an entire generation of Palestinians. The French president has asked a very pertinent question in recent days. How does Israel hope to achieve durable peace and security for its citizens by killing so many Palestinians and giving rise to so much resentment, not just amongst the Palestinians, but in the larger Arab world? Do you not believe that those are very pertinent issues that perhaps Israel needs to think through, even as it goes on talking about achieving quote-unquote complete victory over Hamas?
Absolutely, Neha, no doubt. See, the biggest problem is this, that if Israel is to eliminate Hamas, then it is going for an all-out operation in Gaza Strip, and due to which not only the Hamas is making use of the civilian, but certainly there are huge civilian casualties which are taking place. And this is now indirectly radicalizing the complete population of Palestine, now of Gaza. So the point which is coming is, can the de-radicalization take place in time to come? I don't think so. It will take long time. In fact, the more the war goes on, the more you will find the people are radicalized, and they will never forget the type of treatment they got it from Israel, because majority of the people who have been killed are civilians. Though they may have some association with Hamas, but certainly majority of them are innocent. The fact they are part of in Gaza Strip, they have been now targeted. They have no place to go. Earlier, it was the North Gaza which was addressed. Now it is South Gaza, also Central Gaza. Now, so the point is, very correctly, someone has assessed it, that the more this war goes on, more the casualty of Palestine is there, it automatically radicalizes the population of Palestine, and they will not forget that the Israel has eliminated their majority of the population. So therefore, the point which comes is, how do we handle it? And that is a very important question from Israel, that of course they have to go after Hamas, but at the same time they have to follow the rule of the game, and they have to make sure that the minimum collateral damage is to the Palestinian population. If it does not happen, then de-radicalization, you can only forget about it. There is a further radicalization taking place every day, because the children who will see now that their parents have been killed or their kith and kin have been killed, imagine what will be their future and how will they react when they grow as a youth. So this is the biggest problem which is there, and this is bound to have an impact in this area. But my objection and also my worry is, Neha, this war till now, it was between Israel and Hamas. Maybe Lebanon, you can find, the Houthi rebels from Yemen, or Hezbollah from Lebanon coming into this. But the way this has now flared up in Red Sea, the way Iran is also taking part in ensuring the ships don't go through Red Sea, through Suez Canal. This has got international ramification. And therefore, the chances of this war going out of hand and the Iran coming directly into that, and US Maritime International Force fighting against Iran, possibility there. And that's why this next 3-4 days will be very crucial, because as on today, the complete trade of the world has been adversely affected. And this will affect the economy of the world, which is already on the recession.
Even so an Indian merchant vessel was struck by a drone a few days ago, which the Pentagon claims was fired by Iran, though it was denied by Iran. All right, I'm completely out of time, but does Mr. Melchior want to come in here? Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I just want to say something short about de-radicalization. Remember what the US did to Japan. They dropped atom bombs on Japan, big suffering. Today, Japanese are crazy after American culture. So, of course, de-radicalization is not done in a week or 2 weeks. We have neighbors, both the UAE and Saudi Arabia, who have done great work in Islamic de-radicalization, and they will have a big role here. And this is actually a positive message I want to leave you with, that the involvement of the Abraham Accord countries in this conflict will actually help also resolve this issue and help bring along de-radicalization.
Okay, and since you mentioned the dropping of the atomic bomb, let's not forget about the horrors that Japan and so many of its generations have had to suffer, and the world does not need to witness those horrors ever again. On that note, Itai Melchior, Dr. Alexander Grinberg and Major General Ashwini Sivaj, a big thank you to all of you for joining me on Global Lens tonight. All right, now from the Israel-Hamas war, let's turn our attention to Turkey and NATO. Well, the Turkish Parliament's Foreign Affairs Commission has approved Sweden's NATO membership bid in a key step towards enlarging the Western Bloc after 19 months of delays, during which Ankara demanded security-related concessions from Stockholm. The commission, controlled by President Tayyip Erdogan's ruling AK party, voted to back the bid which Sweden made last year in the face of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The vote took place after 4 hours of debate. The next step is a vote in the Parliament General Assembly, where Erdogan's party holds a majority. It is also expected to pass there in a vote that could be held within weeks. Erdogan would then sign it into law, concluding a process that has frustrated some of Ankara's allies and tested its Western ties. Erdogan's party, its nationalist allies and the main opposition voted in favor of this ratification, while the small Islamist party and right nationalist party voted against it. In a statement following the Commission's approval, the Swedish Foreign Minister said Sweden welcomed the move and looked forward to joining NATO. The NATO Assistant Secretary General for Political Affairs and Security Policy said the Commission's approval was excellent news. Now, President Erdogan had raised objections in May last year to both Swedish and Finnish requests to join the NATO alliance over what he said was their protection of elements which Turkey deems as terrorists and over their defense trade embargoes. Turkey ratified Finland's bid in April this year, but kept Sweden waiting until it took more steps to crack down on local members of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, which the European Union and the US also list as a terror group. In response, Stockholm introduced a new anti-terror bill that makes being a member of a terrorist organization illegal, saying that it had upheld as part of a deal signed last year. Now, Sweden and NATO members, Finland, Canada and the Netherlands also took similar steps to relax Turkey arms export policies. While NATO member Hungary has also not ratified Sweden's membership, Turkey is seen as the main roadblock to adding the Scandinavian nation to the military alliance and bolstering its defences in the Baltic Sea region. Erdogan sent Sweden's bid to Parliament in October, but has also linked his ultimate ratification with US approval of sales of F-16 fighter jets to Turkey. After a call with President Biden this month, Erdogan said Washington was eyeing the ratification to move on the request. The White House backs the sale, though there is no clear time frame for the US Congress to approve it, and Turkey faces some congressional opposition over delaying NATO enlargement and over its human rights record. Turkey's tough diplomacy in the last 18 months has irked many alliance members amid the war in Ukraine. Unlike its allies, Ankara maintains good ties with Moscow as well as Kiev, opposing Russia's invasion on the one hand, but also the Western sanctions on Russia on the other.
The steps that Swedish authorities have taken until today and their pledges are pleasing. As we discussed in our previous meeting, we invited Sweden's Ankara ambassador to receive information about the issue. The ambassador said her country was determined and serious in releasing the pledges it has made within the scope of the trilateral agreement, and that this will continue in close cooperation with our country as well after they become NATO members. She said they were conducting serious work, beginning especially with prevention of terrorism, financing and support of terrorist organizations.
All right, from Turkey, let's now move to the United States, where, of course, the presidential electoral contest is already heating up. Donald Trump, the Republican Party frontrunner for the 2024 U.S. presidential contest, marked Christmas Day by sharing a video compilation of his festive presidential speeches after spending hours ranting about the 2024 election, his legal troubles, and posting a seasonal greeting wishing for his opponents to rot in hell. The former president wrote, and I quote, "Merry Christmas to all, including crooked Joe Biden's only hope, deranged Jack Smith, the out-of-control lunatic who just hired outside attorneys, fresh from the swamp to help him with his poorly executed witch hunt against Trump and MAGA. The holiday greeting was also aimed at world leaders, both good and bad, and the sick and thugs at home, looking to destroy our once great USA. May they rot in hell. Again, Merry Christmas. That's Trump. Well, Trump will be juggling 4 criminal trials that carry a total of 91 felony counts and his presidential campaign in 2024. His legal team is making concerted efforts to try and delay or dismiss the cases. On Saturday, his lawyers asked an appeals court to throw out the 2020 federal election interference case against him on presidential immunity grounds. Democratic Representative Debbie Dingell tore into Trump's Christmas message, calling for various people, as we said, that he sees as looking to destroy the country to rot in hell. Dingell called it one of the most pathetic Christmas greetings she had ever heard, adding that Trump is contributing to the divisiveness and divisions in the country. Now, in the message on his social media platform, Truth Social, Trump went after public figures including world leaders and Special Counsel Jack Smith, who's overseeing the Justice Department's investigation into the former president's actions surrounding the 2020 election and the 6th January Capitol insurrection. Well, Trump continues to maintain a strong lead in the GOP presidential primary. According to many polls, Trump holds an over 52-point lead in the GOP primary polling and a 3-point lead over President Biden in a hypothetical rematch between the two rivals, something that most people expect to witness in 2024. All right, as we wrap up this edition of Global Lens, let's end with this tragic news coming in from South Korea. South Korean actor Lee Sun-kyun, known internationally for his role in the Oscar-winning film Parasite, has died while he was being investigated for illegal drug use. He was 48. Police in the capital Seoul said in a statement that they had received a missing person report from Lee's manager on their hotline. Lee was found in his car this morning. The cause of the death is presumed to be suicide, according to the police. Pictures from the scene show personnel in forensic outfits investigating a car cordoned off by police tape. The police in the city of Incheon confirmed that Lee had been questioned 3 times since October as part of an investigation into alleged drug use. Lee had been summoned by the police most recently on the 23rd of December and held for 19 hours before he was released the following day. Throughout the investigation, Lee's drug tests had all come back negative. Lee had claimed he was being tricked, he had been tricked into using drugs and subsequently was blackmailed by the same individual. Lee filed a lawsuit against the alleged blackmailer, according to the police, who they say had received a tip about his alleged drug use before he filed the suit. A man and a woman have been arrested in connection with this drug investigation. On the 26th of December, Lee had requested the police through his lawyers to conduct a polygraph test on him and these 2 other individuals. South Korea has some of the world's strictest drug laws. Drug-related crimes can be punishable by up to life in prison, and citizens can also be charged for taking drugs abroad. Drug laws in the past have forced celebrities in South Korea to retreat from stardom, as scandals have led to actors' contracts being cancelled and movie releases being postponed. In October 2022, South Korea's Justice Ministry announced that it would establish a government-wide cooperation system in response to increased drug use in the country. The president has pledged to mobilize all capabilities of the entire government to achieve victory in this war on drugs. Now, Lee had received wide acclaim for his role as Park Dong-king, the father of the wealthy Park family in the Oscar-winning film Parasite. He also won praise for his roles in the 2007 television series Behind the White Tower, the 2010 series Pasta, and the sci-fi thriller series Dr. Brain, for which he was nominated for an international Emmy. All right, that's all the time we have on this edition of Global Lens. If you have been, thanks so much for watching.